This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Randy Groover of Boeing about CMS personnel certification.
Plus, is the future of manufacturing above our heads? We'll find out when we come back.
This episode is sponsored by MicroRidge. MicroRidge is your measurement collection specialists, helping you connect any gauge into any software. Visit online at microridge.com.
And welcome back to Quality Digest Live for February 16th, 2018. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Director Sharm, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Indeed he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher, Mike Richmond. Well, we're going to start off the show this week with a very 2018 update on the dreaded death by PowerPoint truism. We all know about that. That, of course, has sucked the life force out of so many potentially engaging presentations over the past decade or two. A new Harvard Business Review article presents insight into this latest trend, which is more insidious and potentially even more horrific, if you can believe that, Dirk. It's terrible. The name of this article is Murder by Machine Learning the New Death by PowerPoint? And it was written by Michael Schrag, who is a research fellow at MIT Sloan School's Center for Digital Business.
Murder by machine learning.
Murder by machine learning. We're going to find out what that's all about, Dirk. Okay. The article first appeared on the HBR website late last month, and we linked out to it in Tuesday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. So what's Schrag talking about here? Are the tools of machine learning and artificial intelligence really that much of a threat, do you think? I mean,
I wouldn't have thought so.
I wouldn't have thought so either, but and maybe he's overstating that a little bit, but it is true that new information technologies are really full of unintended consequences that managers need to consider when implementing them across the enterprise. And there's really two types of machine learning at work here, and each kind of has its own risks. The first is active machine learning, in which people program machines to develop and interpret algorithms of very specific things in very specific ways. The problem with this is that human biases and overconfidence are going to very often lead to poor outcomes. I mean, not everyone can design an algorithm, right? Sure. I mean, much less properly interpret it. Just like not everyone can throw together a dazzling PowerPoint presentation. I mean, there's biases that go into these things going in, and even if you get rid of or manage away some of the biases that go into programming machine learning, you're going to tend to have people using it that don't really have the expertise to use it and interpret the data that comes out of it. So that's the big problem. We saw that again with PowerPoint, people thinking that they're presentation experts. Well, you're really not. And if you try to be, you're not going to get a good result. The next is passive machine intelligence, in which the machines learn from users, setting goals and using data-driven approaches to keep people on task. But you know people, those stubborn people, they have stubborn streaks, especially when it comes to taking cues from a software program. Who wants to be managed by software,
I'm smarter than computers.
That's right. I mean, the risks here involve things like resistance or outright sabotage. We've seen that where people will actually sabotage the system because they don't like that. Schrag suggests that smart managers who want to avoid these types of machine learning issues can start by improving internal communications and transparency. And that means keeping workers in the loop as to why the organization is using machine learning, what it's intended to do, and how it will and won't affect human-centered work. And from there, he suggests kind of a more precise focus on machines and projects that machine learning can really help improve. He mentions a big telecommunications company that successfully used machine learning not just to control customer churn, but also to help identify customers that could not just be retained, but potentially upsold. And that's a pretty major win for that company, if you think about it. I mean, essentially they were able to look at what they were doing in their analytics and be able to present to customers who not only were in danger of just flipping their service from one provider to the next, but maybe, and I don't exactly know how this worked, but maybe within their data set, there was information that revealed that this particular subset of customers could be upsold in some way. And that was, like I say, it's a really big win for the company if you can
Instead
figure
of a
that
loss,
out.
you have a gain. Yeah.
You have a gain, right? And not even a loss. You know, usually they look at that, they're like, well, it's a loss or we're going to stay even. But no, you're going to actually gain something from that. That's really important. So the bottom line here is that machine learning and artificial intelligence, I mean, they're just tools, right? We talk about that a lot. I mean, the potential is there for successes from their implementation, but like a lot of information technologies of the past, if they're not managed properly, they can really quickly go off the rails and they can generate a lot more negative results than positive ones. You don't want to get that. I mean, the idea here is that you want to avoid those unintended consequences. I mean, we see things like email, which, you know, a generation or two ago was thought was going to save all this time. Well, people get bogged down in it because there's so much email, hundreds and hundreds of emails a day some of us get. So the unintended consequences, instead of making your work more efficient, it makes it way less efficient and bogs you down. So you got to think about that when
And I
you're
think
doing
the important thing in there was, remember, these are supposed to be tools. They're not an end in themselves. They're supposed to be, you know, used as a tool with humans, and that produces the outcome, hopefully, that you're looking for.
Exactly, no doubt.
All right. Well, you know, usually when we talk about risk management and, let's say, supply chain issues, that sort of thing, we usually think in terms of a disruption in traditional manufacturing, which in turn leads us to think in terms of the impact on consumer products or aerospace parts, you know, what have you. You know, so a supply chain disruption might be inconvenient, but it's not really the end of the world, right? I just won't get my PlayStation at, you know, Christmas or whatever. But as was pointed out in an article in The Conversation by Morton Wendelboe and Christine Crudo-Blackburn, this year's flu outbreak showed a weakness in our medical supply chain that could have really serious consequences. In the article, This Year's Flu Exposes a Flaw in Our Medical System, the authors point out that this year's flu outbreak was already one of the worst on record. As of January 6th, when this article was written, 20 children had died from the flu, and overall mortality caused by this virus, this particular virus, was already double that of last year's. And one of the issues that potentially makes this situation worse is that of the IV saline bags used in common medical treatments and procedures, including severe cases of flu, these are all made in Puerto Rico, say the authors, or many of them are made in Puerto Rico. So you have this flu outbreak, requires a lot of you know, treatment. Part of that treatment is IV saline bags, and they were in short supply because they come from Puerto Rico, which was what? Recovering from Hurricane Maria. Now, according to the article, hospitals in some areas of the U.S. that are operating at or above capacity because of the flu are quickly running low on saline. And this is the flaw in the medical supply chain that the authors are writing about there. They're kind of bringing to everybody's attention. Many different types of important medical equipment and medicines either come from abroad or rely on a single producer, and in some cases, both, right? Single producer and abroad. So they point out that approximately 80% of all pharmaceuticals used by Americans are produced overseas, usually in China and India. 43% of saline in the United States, 43%, comes from Puerto Rico. Add to that, on top of all this, the idea of the lean principle of just-in-time delivery. You can see where this is going, right? There are two ways that just-in-time system can be disrupted, write the authors: an unexpected surge in demand or a delay in delivery. In this case, we actually had both a potent strain of the flu and a stoppage of saline production in Puerto Rico. So, what the authors are saying, just as it is with manufacturing, public health and emergency preparedness officials need to understand and do a risk assessment of their supply chain. And as with any good manufacturing purchase department, I've worked in several, healthcare organizations need to look at diversifying both the producers and the location of where they get their medical supplies. So in other words, you don't want to get all of your medical supplies from maybe one country, like Puerto Rico or Japan or China or India. And you want multiple producers if possible, maybe in different countries. So you might be getting some of your saline from Puerto Rico, but you may be getting more of your, some more of your saline locally or from Canada or whatever, right? So that if one goes down, you at least have another producer that you can go to for your supplies.
Yeah, I mean, the classic example of that really was in Fukushima, where we saw a lot of the electronics industry really was whacked hard.
It was whacked hard
because it was really centered in that area of Japan, and it was a really major problem for a lot of reasons. And I mean, you this isn't a black swan event. I have to say this. I mean, you know,
it is
people,
not.
you know,
No,
people
exactly,
would say,
yeah.
well, it's a black swan. I mean, who could ever think there'd be a natural disaster at the same time there was a surge in demand? Well, these things happen.
Yeah.
These aren't that rare that you have these kind of impacts happen at the same time. And yeah, diversifying your supply chain is a risk management tool that you really need to kind of consider.
And just real quickly, not so much the case with IV saline. There's nothing proprietary about that, but this is an issue you got to think about with specialty drugs who only have one producer.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if you only have one producer, which may be necessary, and that producer only makes that drug in one location, man, now you're really setting yourself up for trouble.
Really in trouble if something goes down
Yep.
at that location. All right, thanks, Derek. All right, you know, there's some big changes, big doings afoot at our close strategic partner, the Coordinate Metrology Society. In addition to the recent launch of their new and improved website, the ongoing plans for their big annual shindig, CMSC 2018 in Reno this summer, and the rapidly approaching deadline for abstracts of the papers to be presented at that show. They're also kicking off a brand new certification initiative, very interesting. The CMS first began certifying metrology professionals more than 5 years ago, initially beginning with the Level 1 certification, which is a written exam testing foundational theory. The Society then began offering hands-on Level 2 certifications, first on articulated arm portable CMMs, and then for laser trackers. Now, for 2018, the CMS is expanding its certification program to include pilot exams for users of 3D scanners, as well as operators of fixed CMMs. Now, this is a major change.
Yeah, especially the fixed CMMs.
Well, yeah. I mean, it really is. It's very different, and a lot of you listening today to the show could very well find this really interesting. I mean, previously, fixed CMMs were outside the scope of the Coordinate Metrology Society, but this latest initiative might very well cause a lot of you to take another look at what the Society can do to help you in your career. So, joining us now on this month's CMS Corner to tell us more is Randy Groover, a project manager and employee development leader at Boeing, who also happens to moonlight as the CMS's Certification Committee Chair. Randy, welcome back to Quality Digest Live.
Hi. Thanks, Mike. Hi, Dirk.
Hey there.
How are you doing today, Randy?
Terrific.
Good. Well, you know, you and the rest of the executive committee at the CMS, you really decided to focus on 3D scanners and fixed CMMs as the next stage of your certification offerings. So why did you make that decision about those particular two areas, especially the fixed CMMs?
Yeah, fixed CMM. That's probably the biggest news for us. The scanner was next on our list. So we had initially set out to tackle the laser tracker, the portable CMM, PCMM, articulated arm, photogrammetry, and the scanner. You know, that was our original portfolio of offerings for Level 2. CMM, that's brand new. But interestingly, when we first launched the Level 1 certification, that general knowledge cognitive assessment, we had interest from the CMM community to see if it might be applicable to the skill set that they have. So we actually had some of their folks seek to participate in that. We discouraged them because the intent was the portable field. We decided, I think, that it was time to reach out to the fixed CMM community and see if we couldn't include that fixed CMM Level 1 cognitive certification in our portfolio. So NACMA, North American Coordinate Metrology Association, we reached out to those folks. Their domain is kind of specific with the CMMs, and we've got some partnership and have reached out to their audience to help guide us on the journey. And I think we're going to have a real successful product and a pretty receptive audience.
And what is the written assessment going to focus on?
The 5 duty areas that our current written assessment includes, interpreting design requirements, CMM knowledge, the pre-measurement planning piece of the work, performing the measurement operations, then analyzing the data, and ethics. So ethics plays a big part as well in our certifications.
And Randy, has there been any thought about what the hands-on assessment might look like for scanners as well as, of course, for the fixed CMMs?
Yeah, the hands-on piece is kind of where the rubber meets the road. So being able to pass a knowledge exam is one thing, but being able to actually produce data, it can be another. So that's why we went on the two-stage, level 1, level 2 model. So for the scanner, it's going to be quite challenging because there are a number of different types of scanners. There are handheld scanners and arm-mounted scanners and area scanners. We're going to rely on scanner experts. So we're going to put together a workshop into March 22nd and 3rd with the scanner community, number of folks, and we're going to go through the detail of performing task analysis, which is identifying all the tasks that occur and all the steps with regards to using the different types of scanners, and then we'll build the assessment based on the analysis of how the work happens.
And more to the hands-on aspect of this, obviously with the portable equipment, if somebody wants to be tested on the portable equipment for the hands-on, they can go to the CMSC or the equipment can be shipped around. With the fixed CMM, how are you guys going to, or is somebody going to have to go to, a company that manufactures fixed CMMs in order to take the test?
That's where our partnership with right now 6 different private commercial companies as authorized proctors, that's where that comes into play. So it's a great question. So Hexagon is one of our 6 partners, and they're authorized to proctor exams in the level 1 field, and we're going to move forward to also authorize our proctor partners to administer the level 2s. So yeah, at a Hexagon facility, I think you could probably access CMM. And number of service providers are also authorized proctors right now that also have CMMs. So I think we could accommodate it either at the show or at most of, if not all of our authorized proctor sites.
So Randy, can you talk a little bit about the differences and the similarities maybe between portable and fixed CMMs? I mean, how many operators, for instance, might be familiar and are competent with both of those?
I think probably a large number of the folks that use CMMs use both, portables and fixed. In the service sector, for sure, kind of depends on the work rules at some of the bigger companies. But generally, I think there is so much crossover between those 2 technologies, it's not a tremendous leap in skill to move between one or the other. The fixed CMM or traditional CMMs, I think, have always been the gold standard for accuracy. Everybody's measured themselves to. I think the portable devices are probably drawing close. I don't know if they'll ever successfully replace the CMM or traditional CMM. I think there's that tactile element with portable CMMs. There's that technique that you can kind of influence or induce errors into measurements or some lack of consistency. I think with a fixed CMM, there's a machine interface. So you're going to have to know your M codes and G codes and a little bit of machine language and programming. So there's that difference for sure, but I think there's more in common than there is different.
Randy, in the minute we have left here, maybe you can quickly tell the audience where they can go for more information. Obviously, cmsc.org, but what can people take as an action item away from this if they want to learn more about this certification?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the website, I'll tell you the best resource there is the certification handbook. It's available online. It's a PDF. It's at our website, www.cmsc.org. Go there, click on the certification button. There's a link to the handbook. You can download that handbook. It outlines every necessary step to apply for certification, what the recertification requirements are, personal development hours, attending conferences, participating in training, doing the work. All those things earn PDHs. So it's really about not just obtaining an initial certification, but staying active and relevant and current in the technologies to earn those PDHs to keep your certification active.
Well, Randy Gruber, thanks again for joining us today on CMSC Corner. We got a lot of good information there from you on the certification committee activities. Thanks for that. We will see you in Reno in just, well, I guess about half a year, but maybe we'll see you here before then. Thanks again for joining us on CMSC Corner.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thanks, Randy. See you soon.
That's a big.
That's a big thing.
That's a big thing. The fixing, I mean, we knew the laser
Yeah.
scanners, but the fixing thing was kind of a surprise. Like, wow, okay.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. Like I say, a lot of you out there should be interested in that, so check that out at cmsc.org.
That's right. Well, now let's leave Earth here. There is just so much going on in space right now. I mean, like almost every week we're reading something new. I mean, the latest was we just had the mostly successful launch of the SpaceX's Falcon Heavy a week or so ago. Did you watch that by any? Did you watch any of that footage?
Cool. And then Spaceman, yeah.
Oh yeah, the Spaceman, yeah, the Spaceman, and also the
Starman.
the simultaneous landing of the booster rockets.
Yeah, I
I mean,
know.
that was like
It was so cool.
It
I
was
mean,
just so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, private enterprise, man. You know.
I'm telling you. Okay,
where
well,
it's at.
as cool as putting stuff into space is, you might ask yourself, what are the practical applications for this? Well, Quality Digest editorial director Taryn March delved into that in in her article, Off Earth and On Budget. And one of the most interesting, I think, in terms of commercializing it is manufacturing in space, actually building stuff in space to be brought back and sold on Earth. Mm-hmm. Now this actually, you say, well, that sounds cool. I mean,
Yeah.
wouldn't that be awesome? But then the same question that occurs to me, occurs to Taryn, probably occurs to everybody is, how can manufacturing in space possibly be cost effective? It costs a lot of money to send something to space and then bring it back down to Earth. Mm-hmm. Well, it turns out that with the right product, it certainly could be advantageous, have a cost advantage to it. As an example, Taryn points out that there is a fiber optic cable, that fiber optic cable might fit the bill, not run-of-the-mill fiber optic cable that costs maybe $3,000 to $5,000 per kilogram to produce, but something called Z-blan, Z-B-L-A-N fiber. This is a very special type of optical fiber that can transmit a much broader spectrum of light, which is useful for things like ultraviolet surgical lasers and infrared manufacturing tools. That stuff, Z-blan, can run upward of a few $1 million per kilogram. And making it in space means that you can create longer lengths. There's some issues with the lengths that you can create here on Earth because of gravity and so forth. And also with greater purity. So you can manufacture it in space, greater lengths, greater purity than you can on the Earth. So that may be one of the first commercial items we see manufactured in space. So if you think in terms of very specialized products that have usefulness here on Earth, yeah, sure, make it in space. But if you're going to do that, if we're going to manufacture in space, you're going to need what? Manufacturing space.
That's right.
Okay. Manufacturing location. Sorry, manufacturing space. Sorry about that. Okay, so where will that manufacturing plant come from? Where will it be? Well, it might be built by Axiom Space. That word again. Axiom Space is a Houston-based organization, company that plans to build its privately funded commercial space station to replace the ISS, the International Space Station, when the ISS is phased out, which could possibly happen as early as 2024, so not too long from now. Yeah. And then there is mining. Many companies and countries are interested in mining the moon or Mars or asteroids. And of course, where there's money to be made, who shows up?
Lawyers.
Yes! Yes, you got it. Who shows up? It's lawyers, that's right. All of this commercial space stuff has led to some interesting legal discussions. Sure. There is an agreement out there known as as the Outer Space Treaty. Just cracks me up. Where there's money, there's lawyers, of course, even in space. All right. The Outer Space Treaty, among other stipulations, says that the moon and other celestial bodies shall be used by all states parties to the treaty exclusively for peaceful purposes. So that raises the question, would a peaceful purpose include extracting minerals for benign manufacturing back on Earth?
You know what that reminds me of? I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, it would be my guess. I interrupt you all the time.
It reminds me of in the early 1500s when Spain and Portugal divided the entire world between them.
Right.
I believe that Portugal had everything that was west of a certain line, a certain longitudinal line,
Okay.
and then Spain had everything east of it. They did. They divided the enther world.
Yeah, you get the
in
left side, we
it's
get the
like
right side.
15-10 or something. They said, you have that, we have this.
Right.
Well, it didn't work out so well. But I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
in any event, that's the smallest side for you.
By the way, did you know, we were talking about, did you know that there is a new breed of lawyer called a space lawyer? That's actually, and they when they're coming up in their training, they're focusing on space law.
Well, in space, no one can hear you arbitrate.
Nobody can hear you arbitrate. That's right.
That's what they say.
That's right. By the way, by all accounts I have read, these private ventures are putting things in space for cheaper than government entities have, which is leading to a transition, I think. Space up until recently has been largely about exploration, what's out there, and now it's transitioning to a commercial enterprise where now the goal is, can we make money doing this?
Imagine
so
that.
But I mean, commercialization always follows exploration. I mean, it's been that way from the beginning of time. I mean, you mentioned, 1500s. Well, once you start saying, hey, we can sail across the ocean, well, hey, what can we do on the other side?
What can we make over there? And same
or
thing.
bring back or trade.
Precious metals is actually what drove that at the beginning too.
Or spices later.
Whatever, yeah. But I mean, it is interesting because I mean, you have the schism between the governments doing this, NASA and the Russian Space Agency doing this. In the 60s and 70s for purposes really just of information and knowledge, and prestige was a big part of it too. But I mean, it makes sense that the commercial piece of this, which is worth, who knows, unknown trillions and trillions of dollars, beyond that, quadrillions of dollars maybe. I mean, you mining the moon, I mean, but the other thing about that is, also to use an example, I mean, when they did find a lot of gold in the New World, the price of gold in the Old World went way down because the supply was so much higher now.
Right.
So it's like, well, what if they find, what if they find on the moon 10 times the amount of gold they have on the moon?
Right.
What's that going to do to the price of gold, right? I mean, it's
right.
like supply and demand, right? So it's like there's always unintended consequences to all this stuff. But yeah, certainly the commercial element of this is what's going to drive it. And the efficiency of organizations that are in it for profit generally is going to be much better than governments who are just doing it for fuzzy reasons of whatever.
Right.
So yeah, you think about NASA versus Elon Musk. Sure, what he did with Falcon was orders of magnitude cheaper than what NASA could have done with that. So,
of course, and as a lot of people point out, he built on the back of what I mean. He probably couldn't have done it if NASA hadn't already done a lot of the legwork. But just the same,
it's interesting stuff.
Yeah, interesting stuff.
All right, we have a couple of minutes, Dirk. So I'm going to get to my off script because this is one that you were just talking about this morning. It's funny. The Winter Olympics.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about that.
So fun.
We love the Winter Olympics. It's going on right now, and of course we've seen all of these winners.
Yep.
We've seen a lot of losers.
Yep.
There's a lot more losers than winners. My question to you is,
everybody should get a medal.
Participation medal.
It's just, everybody should get a medal.
Well,
you did a good job.
Here's the question I have for you, and here's how it applies to many things beyond just sports. I mean, sports and politics and continuous improvement activities, all these things where there's so much preparation that goes into it. And outcomes, of course, are really important. But I mean, you do all this work, and you prepare and you prepare and you prepare. For the Olympians, they prepare for years to have this moment, and you probably are going to lose, right?
Right.
So what's more important? Is it the preparation or is the outcome? And is failure a failure? Or is there more that you get out of failure than you get out of success, considering the fact that in this example, many more fail than succeed?
Oh, I that you gave me an easy question. No, I think the preparation, having the idea and pursuing it, I think is as important, or maybe even more important than the outcome, because you learn so much. I mean, when somebody has this idea that nobody's had, and they pursue it, even if they fail, they learn so much from it, and that information gets passed on down to other people who are going to learn to want to innovate, that even if you lose, the amount of knowledge gained from that, I think, far surpasses what you might have gotten even if you won.
Right.
Or even if your project succeeded. So I think that's why I think it's just always great to see. I mean, it's the same thing with these Olympians. Sometimes, their back is up against the wall. They know they're going to have to do like these crazy, outlandish tricks if they're going to get on the podium, right? So they go, hey, I've got nothing to lose. I'm going to give it my all, and if I fail, I've gone down in a blaze of glory, but if I succeed, I make it to the podium. Well, I think there's a lot you can read into that in terms of what we do within our world. It's like you have this great idea. I'm going to pursue it because I know if I do, it'll take my company to the next level, or maybe it may even keep my company from going under.
Right.
I'm just going to go all the way with it, and I'm going to learn from it.
All right, but what about having an outcome that's a positive outcome that you haven't necessarily earned? You just lucked into something, let's say, and you have an outcome that works. But I'm saying, I mean, is that lesser? Is that if you didn't prepare as much?
Well, I think it's.
I mean, we're a society that's built on outcomes, positive outcomes.
But it makes no. Okay, so my answer is it makes no difference to the company. A positive outcome is a positive outcome.
Right.
Awesome. However, I got there.
Right.
I think for society, there's much more value from those companies who have failed and failed and failed and failed and failed and then succeeded, than if right out of the gate they failed they succeeded for whatever reason. Because I think there's just so much knowledge that's gained from those failures.
But for the organizations themselves.
Oh, for the organizations, it's like who wouldn't want to get something for free?
Right, essentially. You don't work for it. But I mean, so you're saying there's really, I mean, from a knowledge base, from learning, from getting better, you're almost better off. You are better off.
You are better off failing.
But I mean, outcomes are important too. And you'll take the outcome that's a good outcome, whether you work for it or not.
When I'd say even if that company that fails and fails and fails and fails and then goes under, societally, that's a plus.
Yeah, but not for all the employees.
Not for those guys there. But for the long term, it's like, well, this company tried, they tried this and they tried that. Oh, and there was the mistake they made there, and there was a mistake they made there. But the basic idea was good. We can learn from those mistakes and now try to do what they were trying to do and maybe succeed.
And you're saying, I mean, even what you just talked about, the article with Elon Musk and SpaceX, I mean, they learned from a lot of failures that NASA had.
Sure.
So they kind of learned on the backs of the American taxpayer. Kind of.
You got it. In a sense, American taxpayers helped Elon Musk.
That's true. That's true. Good stuff. All right. Thanks, Dirk. All right. Well, that is our show for this week. But before we go, we want to thank today's sponsor, MicroRidge. MicroRidge is your measurement collection specialist. They offer measurement collection solutions that seamlessly connect any gauge into any software in real time with 100% accuracy. Each MicroRidge solution can be used individually or in combination to address any measurement collection situation, from livestock tracking to aerospace manufacturing. For more information, visit online at www.microridge.com.
And that is it for this week's Quality Digest Live. Thanks to Randy Groover of Boeing and the Coordinate Metrology Society for joining us via Skype earlier on in the show. And by the way, if you are a CMM programmer, user, whatever, a fixed CMM programmer, user, whatever, check out cmsc.org and look up that CMM personnel certification
handbook.
Good stuff.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. We'll see you then.
So long.
Bye.